webinar. My name is Robin Lewis, and I am the Chief Mentor of the THINC webinar program. And we're delighted to have you with us tonight for our session, which is entitled Measuring Happiness in the Age of Technology. I would just comment that this is a momentous moment to be discussing happiness, because as you all know, we are still in the midst of a global pandemic and in the last few days of a war in Europe. So it throws our question into very sharp relief. And the dilemma, the challenge of how to promote, to nurture, and to measure happiness is very important. And the role of technology as well in fostering happiness is something we're going to talk about, that happiness and well-being. We have both scholars and practitioners of the happiness and well-being space. And the urgency of our discussion, I think, is also something that is in the context of what I think we're all hearing from mental health professionals everywhere, in every country and every continent, which is because of the pandemic, not just because of the pandemic, but certainly in the context of the pandemic, they are all seeing a sharp rise in depression, in anxiety, and in suicide. And this is a real challenge to us, where we all are exposed to so much information. And when the information is unhappy, when the news, if you will, is bad, happiness becomes even more of a challenge. So that's the question we face tonight. I will be your moderator, and I'd like to move now to our keynote speaker. We're very delighted to have with us today Professor Kai-Ping Peng from Tsinghua University. Professor Peng is Professor of Psychology and Dean of the School of Social Sciences at Tsinghua. He is the founder of the Psychology Department of Tsinghua University, the Happiness Technology Lab, and the Chinese Association of Positive Psychology. He received his PhD in social psychology from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in 1997, then joined the faculty of the Psychology Department of the University of California at Berkeley. He has published 12 books and more than 400 articles and essays on cultural, social, and positive psychology. He is the world's most, in 2007, was tapped as the world's most cited social psychologist at the associate professor level. And he has won titles of Top 10 Best Teachers in China in 2015, Person of the Year among Health Professionals in 2016, and the most cited Chinese psychologist in the world since 2015. So we're delighted to have him. He will kindly entertain a few questions at the end. So if you have questions, you can just put them into chat and while he's speaking, and I will take them more or less in order once he is finished with his talk. The title of his talk is Improving Well-Being via Positive Psychology. How do psychologists measure happiness? The floor is yours, Professor Peng.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robin, for your such a wonderful, heartwarming introduction. And thank all the Tencent fellows and friends. Good night. This is a Saturday night. I have to apologize for you because I'm now quarantined in a hotel in Shanghai. So my connection is not ideal. Maybe from time to time, there will be a breakout, but I'll come back. So the topic today is about how to measure happiness. So I will discuss my understanding and also my work on this topic, and particularly from the perspective of cultural psychology and positive psychology. So why should we talk about this issue? Robin just mentioned that this is increasingly a global challenge, particularly at this pandemic period. And how should we address those issues? So I will discuss a little bit about the implication of positive psychology. We'll focus on the topic of how to measure happiness from a psychological perspective. There are different ways to measure happiness. So there are anthropological approach, sociological, economical, and I will focus on psychological measurement of happiness. At the end, I would like to answer a few questions from audience. So we now know there's an increase in depression rate and suicide rate among young people around the world. So according to a UCLA study published 5 years ago, the undergraduate students who had a severe depression rates increasing dramatically since 2013. This is also true for the teenagers. What we talk about the UCLA study, that's about the undergraduate students. According to national survey on drug use and health, the teenager suicide rate is increasing a lot in the US. This phenomena is not just American phenomena. We find that this thing kind of self-harm by teenager girls in Great Britain and also in Canada, also in China and Japan, in many other places. So I'm not going to bother you with all those depressing data. The question is that how should we do it? How should we address those issues? Psychologists have been in business of studying mental health, improving people's well-being for centuries, but the results was not that encouraging. So we can see from previous data survey, the number of depressing and suicides, anxieties, and increasing, not decreasing. So what's wrong with our psychological approach? In 1999, then American Psychological Association president, Martin Seligman, who is a psychology professor from UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, who gave this very important address as a elected president of APA, American Psychological Association. He believed that probably we got everything wrong. Psychologists have been talking about how to help people, how to find the problems, how to manage those psychological problems for centuries, but we didn't get good results. Perhaps he argued that we may change our approach. Probably it's better to find a way to emphasizing the positive functioning of human beings in order to replace, to transcend those negative experiences that people may have. So this approach, he labeled that as a positive psychology. So in in 2000, he published this paper, Introduction to Positive Psychology, suggests that perhaps we should study the conditions and the process that contribute to the flourishing or optimal functioning of people, group, and the institutions. That's how positive psychology come to place. So what does this positive psychology really want to do? I think that they want to do two things. One is to find a way to improve people's well-being and happiness. Second is find a way to prevent this impact of any risk factors that may affect people. So in April 16, I think on April 16, 2016, Professor Martin Seligman came to China and visited Tsinghua. We decided to set up the world's first happiness technology lab in the world. And that is the beginning of my career in this positive psychology and happiness technology. So what we have done, we created this first ever happiness technology lab in the world, try to combine science and the technology. So we argue that science technology have helped humans to improve our strengths, the physical strengths, where we can move mountains, we can build high scribe and the bridge and the railroads. That's pretty much happened in the 18th and 19th centuries. Last centuries, we humans use technology to improve human intelligence. We can search information much faster. We can use artificial intelligence to help us to design, to create, to communicate much better than before. I think for this 21st century, this new century we're in right now, we can use science technology to improve individuals' well-being. So that's the positive psychology, what it's really about. Then how to measure happiness, that's the topic of tonight. Positive psychologists believe that we can use culture-specific measurements to measure individuals' experience in different cultural contexts. So the number one concern we have is that we have to have localized, culture-sensitive measurements of happiness, because different people in different cultures, they do have a different understanding what happiness means. So in Chinese cultural context, if you ask Chinese, are you happy? Typical response is that, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because Chinese have different understanding of happiness, slightly different from other cultures. So this is the first lessons we have to consider when we talk about how to measure happiness, is the cultural sensitivity and the histories and also meanings of happiness to people. And we also find that the approach could be divided into two kinds. One is what we call the reflective measurements. So basically, you want the people to reflect the life experience as a whole. Are you happy with your life? Are you satisfied with your life? In general, how much you consider yourself to be a happy person? So that's what we call the reflective measurements. But sometimes we need to have experienced measurements, how you feel right now at this moment. So this is what we call the state measure versus trait measure. So reflective is a measurement of a trait over time, over different contexts, versus this state measurement that's very much about what's going on right now. So how do we do that? Well, first we needed to have a different series and the scientifically sound series about what happiness really is. So in my research, we use Martin Seligman's survey of happiness to measure individuals' well-being. Martin Seligman proposed that if you want to find individual happiness, probably you need to measure 5 components that people may have experienced. First is positive emotions. So how happy are you in general? Second is engagement. How much you enjoy what you're doing at the moment. Number 3 is a positive emotion. We find that one powerful indicator of happiness is a positive relationship. So happy people tend to have a more constructive, nurturing interpersonal relations. And number 4 is the meaning of life. So if you find that your job, your life is meaningful, you're more likely to feel certain level of happiness. Number 5 is accomplishment or achievement. So happy people tend to believe they have accomplished something. They have get what they really want to get in life. So that's the theory that we've been using to measure happiness. So there are different theories that we find that this series quite useful and meaningful. So the study we did is to use this series to identify activities, also identify expressions people have about the happiness. So this is one of the biggest scale research. So we actually survey over 200 million Chinese. You may be surprised. This is the biggest study in the world in history. So 200 million Chinese expressions in the year 2013. So they express the emotions online. So we spent 3 months to collect all those expressions. Then applying this PERMA model, this Martin Seligman happiness model, and then find that total 1,552 the keywords that can indicate the person's happy in Chinese. We also find 700 activities that can indicate that people are happy Chinese tend not to talk about the happiness, but they tend to emphasize in their actions, their activities. They're happy, like I drink a lot of Mao-Tai, or I talking to friends. So those are the actions that are somehow indicating happiness. So we construct happiness algorithms, then using the Weibo data to come up interesting the map to indicating the individuals, also regional variations in happiness. So this is the happiness map for the year 2013 in China. This is also the fluctuation of happiness among Chinese for the year 2016. So you can see that during the holidays, the Chinese tend to be very happy. So holiday make people happy. Of course, those post-holiday depressions, we can notice that. And we also find that the celebrities' suicides cause widespread unhappiness as well. So this is a study that we published. We also find some interesting academical research results. For instance, there is a discrepancy between happiness and economical well-being. So psychological well-being and the economical well-being, there's a certain level of correlations, particularly for poor people. So for poor people, you want to be happy, you need to make more money. But for people who have an income over 50,000 per year, then your psychological well-being somehow become less dependent on economical well-being. So we find many interesting results. So how to improve people's happiness? We also apply Martin Seligman and Professor Chris Peterson's theory that we find that there are 24 psychological characteristics that you can teach people, the skills you can teach people. You can somehow develop those character strengths that can improve individual happiness. So that's based on the theory of Peterson and the Seligman's psychological research. So we also find a way to improve happiness with class educations. So we implemented this positive education programs in China among 300 schools in China. That's a very big number. Almost 500,000 Chinese students took our class. So what we did is to teach people how to improve your views about yourself. That's called the positive self. And also how happy you are as an emotion, how you feel you are happy or not. That's called a positive emotion. And positive relationship and positive engagement, positive meanings, and positive achievements. We find that use this approach, we can actually improve the students, the teenagers, the elementary school and middle school students' psychological well-being and happiness. So that has been implemented for 500,000 students. The results are very encouraging. Anyway, so those are the approach, and that's what we have done. And I just gave you a general pictures what we Chinese positive psychologists have been doing. If you want to know more about my research and positive psychology, you can read my book and also my WeChat and my Weibo blogs. So that's basically a brief introduction to positive psychology, also the work we've been doing. And I would like to answer any questions you might have. And I have 15 minutes speech. I think I finish up, but I do have 5 minutes for Q&A. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Professor Peng, for your wonderful talk. We do have a few questions here. And the first one from Petros is, he asks, can we feel happy and depressed at the same time?
This is a very good question. I think this is also my research domain because I'm made my name in this emotion called the dialectical emotion, meaning that you can feel happy and sad at the same time. But for psychologists in the United States, they disagree with me. So many people who grown up in the Western cultural context, they had the difficulties to understand the contradictory emotions can exist. Charles Darwin actually said that explicitly, you cannot have happiness and the depression at the same time. He said so in his book. But we find that people can have happiness and also depression at the same time. For example, for the parents, the kids left home to college. At that moment, you feel very happy for the kids because they finally grown up to go to college. But in the meantime, you feel depressed because they will leave you forever, right? They will grown up, they will leave the parents. You will become the empty nest parents. So at that moment, you do have this contradiction, mixed emotions. So my research proved that people can have it, but still many people in the West cultural context, they disagree with me. So it's a very, very smart question, and it's $1 million question because I got $1 million to study the so-called contradictory emotions. So good questions.
Very good. We have another question, very interesting one, a little more technical. Qian Li asks, could you please elaborate a bit more about your model, how the 1,500 plus keywords were selected? Did you use an NLP model or other machine learning algorithms?
Yes, I used the NLP model because there were natural language the list programs developed by Tsinghua Professor Shen Mao Song, my colleague at Tsinghua University. So he let me use this program who select those words. And so we have that approach. But if you want to know more about that technical issues, I have a paper published on this journal called the Social Indicator. So that's in 20, I think, let me see, 2017. So Social Indicator. So we gave a very detailed description about the procedures and the program we used in for that the happiness studies. So search my name and you will find that paper. So good question.
Very good. A third question, Professor, comes from Arthur Gopak, who asks,
yes.
Can a person be happy all the time?
I don't think so. That's a very good question because emotion is pretty much not just as a trait, but also as a state. So individual emotional states can be very much fluctuated. So you cannot be happy all the time. Even you have genetical dispositions to be more happy than other people in average, but you do have time that you feel a little bit down and slow, right? Or a little bit even depressed. So you will have that kind of emotions. So it's very difficult to have people always happy all the time. So that's unlikely.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one or two more questions. Lawrence Yu asks, does our tendency in Chinese culture to mask positive emotions on a social occasion influence our psychological well-being?
This question that's a little bit complicated. Do Chinese culture, is that what you're saying, encourage people to master positive emotion? Probably true, because this culture has long traditions of emphasizing positive education, positive cultivation. But surprisingly, we did a big data study to look at the expressions, like how much you want to use the positive expressions in daily conversations. We find that the Chinese language tend to be least happy in everyday conversation. So they don't want to say it. They value that. They want to promote that positive experience. But however, when they come out to say it, they tend to emphasize the negative aspect. Like the Chinese mothers, even they love the kids very much, but when they talk about it, they always talk in a little bit less encouraging ways, like even the kids get a perfect score, the mother will say, well, don't be so happy because next time you may not get such a high grade. So you can see that the Chinese to be very dialectical, that made them that even they want to be happy, but that they don't want to say it as much as in other language. For instance, we find the Spanish to be most happy in everyday expressions. English is in the middle, but the Chinese tend to be least happy expressions. But doesn't mean the Chinese are not happy. It's just they don't want to talk about it in that way. So I hope I addressed this questions well. But there's a paper also on that topic. So it's a linguistic expression show very interesting cultural differences.
Very good. Thank you so much, Professor. There are more questions, but we need to move on. We thank you so much for joining us and for your wonderful talk, which I know we all found. And one thing I left out of the chat messages and the questions were a number of great compliments to you. And I join those compliments and thank you for your contribution.
Oh, thank you, Robin. Thank all the questions.
Very good.
Thank you, Professor.
Now we move on to the panel discussion, and we can maybe come back to some of those questions. I have them saved up here on the chat. We have 5 members of our team who will speak. I will introduce them one by one. I will ask you again, if you have questions for the panel, just to put them on chat, and we'll go through them all at the end of the 5 short presentations. They're all going to speak for about 7 or 8 minutes. Our first speaker is Biman Lianage, who's a researcher, inventor, and serial entrepreneur with several advanced technology development ventures established in Beijing, in Hong Kong, and in his native Sri Lanka. With over 20 patents, Biman has also won numerous awards, including TechCrunch's Startup Competition, the Red Dot Design Award, and he's been a finalist for the IF Design Award 2021. He's currently focused on non-invasive graphene-based wearables, digital twin technologies, and emotion AI for mental health diagnostics. His contribution to the industry has already earned him nominations for the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia Class of 2017, as well as the Forbes China Class of 2017 in the field of healthcare and sciences. He comes to us tonight from Beijing, speaks to us from Beijing, and I turned it over to you, Biman.
Thank you so much, Robin. Today, actually, I want to talk to you guys about one of the interesting things I've been doing for the past few years for understanding human emotions, happiness, and mental health related characteristics through non-invasive methods. So one of the things that before starting the talk, we want to really understand the importance of measuring human emotions beyond algorithms. So that means how we can teach machines to detect human emotions is extremely important thing. And also we need to kind of understand, like, what happens when we feel happy. So body uses dopamine as a way to reward your survival behavior. So when you look at from the Maslow's triangle, you can see that, like, the bottom layer, the basic needs when we are supposed to, like, in the Stone Ages, when we started getting, like, food, sex, sleep, shelter, and warmth, like we actually was activated our brain like chemicals to kind of like feel as a reward. So it actually was like a survival tactic that moved on, that actually creates a certain interesting expressions that can be measured by like machines. So when you look at like how machines can detect emotions, you can see that like EEG is one of the techniques. You can look at facial expressions that also, apart from that, you can use fMRI scans or brain imaging to see, like, how these emotions are getting expressed, and using a machine as a tool to be able to look at it. But the issues with these techniques are, like, one of the things is it's less scalable, and then you need to have very specialized expert for analysis, and you have high cost of implementation, and there's something we call as like minimal emotional resolution. So I'll talk a little bit about what these things mean. So when you want to design a deep learning system to detect emotions, you need to first understand how many emotions are there. So if you look at the Plutchik's wheel, you can look at all these emotions are extremely close together in the middle, and then again, they get like, little bit diluted when they go up. So when you take all the emotions and put it into a graph of like valence and arousal, you can actually like cluster them in like groups, and you can teach like a machine to be able to detect this. So I've been specializing in detecting emotions using voice through a technique called vocal biomarkers. So using vocal biomarkers, one of the things that we've been able to do is that we've been able to detect like very complex emotions so that we can have like high resolution when we're detecting from voice. So I'll tell a little bit about like how this happens. So this is something, the science behind vocal biomarkers is actually related to like how speech is getting generated. So when you're actually speaking, there's something called a source filter theory, where your lungs act as your source, your vocal folds acts like a filter, so that like the speech is getting produced. So you can model like a human speech into a mechanical system where that you can kind of understand extremely interesting features that are related to like emotions and other related characteristics. So when you want to train a machine learning system, one of the things is that you need to have diversity of data. And then again, you need to annotate the data. So if you want to detect complex emotions, you really very easily understand that like the human being's ability to annotate an emotion is less than 30% if you're not an expert. So once you kind of like, have this complex problem solved, you need to be able to design very intelligent systems that uses very little amount of data to be able to give you like cutting edge results. So this is the work that I published in 2020 with to have like state-of-the-art results with 1/8 of the data for detecting like complex emotions. So when you kind of go from here, I wanted to look at what actually is the important thing. So we have 1 billion people suffering from mental disorders, 350 million people suffering from depression, which means every 40 seconds, one person actually is like recorded suicide. So if you use the standard way of like, looking at a psychiatrist, like using 90 minutes of interviewing the person costs you like around $150 per an hour. And then you need to have like, 21 days of waiting, which is the reason why 85% of like, the people are not getting the adequate care that they need. So you need to have like a more effective, efficient, and scalable way of like working towards kind of understanding what is your mental health looks like. So we introduce a concept which is called vocal biomarkers, which actually by collecting data, we ask like 13 different questions, counting numbers, reading passages, and to say different words in different ways. So using that, we use a technique called self-supervised transfer learning to kind of look at like what happens when like someone talks in a very in linguistic, acoustic, and also like effective way. So I'm giving you like 2 examples just to give you to see. This is like 2 female Chinese speakers that completing a vocal task. When you look at the phonemes, when you visualize the phonemes, you can actually see very clearly there's a difference between depressed and non-depressed people. So the energy level, when the phonemes happen before the language is even been made. So that means like we are like actually looking at features in the voice when like speech is produced, but not like language is being produced. So that before even we go to NLP, we look at acoustic characteristics of like people that who are depressed or non-depressed. So once you train a machine learning model, one of the things that we realized, and after studying for a long time, is that there's been studies happening from 1976 around this acoustic like characteristics, and people have studied it in acoustic, affective, and language form, and the relationship that you see in the screen right now is what people have figured out. So what we've been able to do is using like self-supervised transfer learning, which is like a technology that that's somewhat similar to how human brain learns certain information with raw audio data without doing any feature engineering. So we use feature engineering as like a method to explain what's going on behind the screens, but we actually try to stick with like raw audio data and then build models that can be extremely generalized towards like current day applications. By doing so, what we've been able to do is with 40 seconds of audio recording, we can do real-time evaluation that actually has been able to like increase the screening efficiency for 13,500% in advancement. So our sensitivity, specificity is all above the clinical standard, and we've been able to do like a very diverse clinical study in China. And the most interesting thing is that this doesn't have any additional hardware costs, and any cheap 16 kilohertz recording device can actually do this thing. So this is extremely important so that you can build the scalability and you can bring it to like developing countries and developed countries at the same time. And also you can integrate in like multi-experience centers to analyze hospitals to like businesses to kind of like, empower them to help people to get diagnosed as early as possible. But if we can diagnose depression at an early stage, anxiety at an early stage, we can actually make sure that the person is getting the adequate help that they need at a given time. So one of the things that before wrapping up, I want to tell is that technology needs to be designed with intention. So we've been spending for the past 5 years specifically looking at this thing because depression looks like these two pictures that's on the screen, I've gone through depression myself in 2016 when things were like, working really well. So the question that we had like, a little bit earlier about can happiness and depression stay at the same point? I have someone that who has experience, and teaching that difference for a machine is extremely complex task that I hope to like, continue and finish in my lifetime. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope like to stay with the panel and help you guys with like any questions in the panel session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Biman. I look forward, as I think many of the listeners do, to looking in more detail and at a slower pace at your slides after the talk, because they were wonderful. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Maxton R. Scotland. He comes to us from London. He's been a military, his title, first of all, is founder and director of Impact X Limited. And he's an advisor to the United Nations Department of Global Communications Youth Steering Committee. He has been a military linguist with the UK Armed Forces and is the former chair of the UN Civil Society Conference in 2016. He is passionate about youth development, sustainable development in the Global South, mental health within the veterans community, evidence-based policy in the decision-making process of all levels and all groups. He's currently working out of London, as I mentioned. He has a PhD in international development from the University of London, so as the School of Oriental and Asian Studies. Take it away, Maxton.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. I must warn you beforehand that I am a bit technologically inept, so please bear with me. So today I'm going to be focusing on technology and how technology has been used to assist the veterans community. And we focus on mental well-being and also happiness. And also we know that there's pros and cons of technology. But I want to focus on how technology has been used to assist veterans or serving personnel within the emergency services. So over the past 30 years, we have seen the improvement of technology to better veterans' lives injured in combat. Clinicians have been able to treat patients in ways unimaginable in the early 80s and 90s. Satellite communications have provided a lifeline for families to stay connected during long deployments, even for serving personnel. Before, soldiers would communicate with their loved ones through letters, which often took a long time. Then with the slow advancement of mobile phone technology, they would take pixelated short videos, board them to floppy disk, and mail them home to their families through snail mail. But PTSD, along with other mental health challenges, as we all know, such as depression, anxiety, suicide, are among some of the top illnesses affecting the community. However, the advancement of technology has helped to provide real-time treatment. For example, with IBM's real-time virtual environment builders, veterans can relive and reorganize traumas in a safe and therapeutic setting, ultimately accelerating the impact of treatments both in time and require professional input. VR gaming headsets has also been used as a form of therapy in the US military. Consultants can interact with the virtual community, with the virtual reality with the patient. And also we have 3D printing, which among other forms of advanced technology has been beneficial in creating artificial limbs to help injured persons reintegrate into society. These, as we all know, can be excellent benefits and are excellent benefits that help improve and measure veterans' happiness. For example, someone who doesn't have, who was blown up in Afghanistan or Iraq, for example, who now then benefit from having artificial limbs, their livelihood can be improved because then they can reintegrate into society. They can either go and exercise or run and track and fields, or even go to the pub, or just reintegrate into normal life, and this then improve their mental well-being. The other thing I want to talk about is the ability to filter information online, because it's very easy to get access to all sorts of information online, which can prove disastrous or beneficial. And especially for this very secluded community, not having access to the right information or to the right spaces, can be detrimental, especially as we're witnessing today what is happening in the West with the Russia-Ukraine challenge. There are good and bad aspects of social media and finding information online. However, sometimes finding that proper equilibrium can be at best a mammoth task. We're often exposed to misinformation through video propaganda, posts that are not fact-checked, and people who don't care how detrimental their uninformed opinion can have on others. So the rise of the internet and social media has compounded the problem of fake news. The traditional news model, where a few outlets are staffed by trained journalists who interview credible sources and then fact-check the information before publication, has been upended by the current media environment. Today, it is reasonably easy for conspiracy theories and rumors to spread through multiple channels, continuous messages, and faced many times with the paradoxical statements, and it can be easier to cling to a more unadorned fiction than dissect a more complex reality. The effect on one's mental health can be onerous, hence why authorities, I believe, should be able to make readily available specific channels to disseminate accurate information. Having all this information at your fingertips can be good and bad for the intelligence gathering as well. If someone is not equipped with the necessary training and objectivity, it can prove to be disastrous. Intelligence gathering is almost like doing your research paper at the postgraduate level. You must remain objective, steadfast, and critically aware of the information you are accessing and how to translate it in real time. Imagine you're an analyst and you mistakenly translate peace to mean war. The results can be detrimental. Online, you can be anyone you want, and it is ever increasingly important to connect veterans within a secure community online to boost their happiness and mental state. Influence is a game, and information warfare is how this new type of war is won. The ability to plant seeds of ideas into people's minds, have them question the information and attempt to change their minds is now the seat of power. Unfortunately, regulations have not kept up pace with technological advances, result in sort of like a Wild West, anything goes mindset. These type of persuasion tactics have become big businesses, and as P.W. Singer and Emerson Brooking penned in their book Like War, social media's weaponizing has become a battlefield where information itself is weaponized. So within this community, where tech can be beneficial is by having TED Talk programs, creating effective Facebook groups where these veterans can come together and share their experiences, talk about the mental health challenges, which is really important, speaking to people who have experienced what they've gone through. And that's one of the advantages of technology within this community. And that's how we can work together to improve the mental well-being of these veterans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maxton. Our next speaker is Lim N. Lim is an Army officer, the mother of a 4-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl, and she's a grassroots leader. She serves on the board of the National Youth Achievement Award Council, which is a Singapore-based nonprofit organization that develops and maximizes the potential of young people to make a difference and contributes to society. She is logging in from the sunny island of Singapore today, and will be sharing how the COVID pandemic has affected the mental health of the people in Singapore and how Singapore has leveraged technology to enhance the mental wellness of her people. She has a master's degree in international relations from Cambridge University, a master's in strategic studies from the Victoria University of Wellington, and a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Chicago. Take it away then.
Thank you so much, Robin. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lemon. and I'm logging in from the sunny island of Singapore. So today I'll provide a deep dive into Singapore, my home country, as a case study on firstly, how mental health has been affected due to COVID-19. And secondly, how we actually leverage technology to help the people cope during this pandemic. So COVID-19 has indeed brought unprecedented shifts in our lives. So global mental health has been severely impacted during the pandemic, and stress factors include the fear of infection, the social isolation brought about by social distancing, and the shift to a hybrid work model, leading to employees juggling work between responsibilities at home and at work, especially when there's no clear demarcation between what is home versus workspace. And for me personally, I had to juggle like working from home and also home-based learning of my own kids, which is really difficult because when you are in front of a computer and your kid comes to you, you have to like kind of decide at that moment what is more important, right? So these are all the stress that we feel. So a global survey shown here showed that there has been an increased number of people suffering from depression and anxiety during the pandemic. And as you can see here in Singapore, about 9% of the people actually experience such symptoms as a result of this pandemic. So what are some of the sources of stress? So this includes for the older Singaporeans, such as their family members or friends might be infected, or their anxiety over the future, about the finances and unemployment. And among the youth are things about also finances and worries about their academic or their work performance. And there's this stark increase in feeling of isolation as social activities were cut off, right, to reduce the risk of transmission. So even as I speak now in Singapore, we can only gather in groups of 5 people and not more than that. So over the Chinese New Year, only up to 5 people could visit our homes. And, this leads to some of the cut in social activities. And that's why people might feel that kind of stress. So isolation in the pandemic has really triggered a huge upsurge in stress. But in Asian countries like Singapore, there's still this stigma around seeking help. So people feel that if they seek help, they'll be perceived as weak. However, we want to let people understand that this is not the case and help people overcome this stigma. So what happened is to help the people in Singapore, the Ministry of Health here actually convened a COVID-19 mental wellness task force in October 2020 to review the psychosocial impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the population. So what happened? So we realized that the pandemic was very hard on people and hit different parts of community in different ways. So to help with the people to cope with the mental health, Singapore saw this need for a one-stop shop for people to seek mental health support from the privacy of their own homes, because we will strongly encourage not to leave our house to reduce the spread of transmission. Thus, the Ministry of Health actually leveraged the technology and created this website, as you can see here, called mindline.sg. So this mindline.sg is actually a web-based repository of resources and tools to improve mental well-being. So users can actually access this website and use self-assessment too through this portal to understand their state of emotional well-being, anxiety, and depression. And based on the assessment and severity, the platform can actually recommend appropriate intervention and support channels. And this mindline.sg is actually also enhanced with an emotionally intelligent AI bot called Visa. As you can see here, the penguin on the top left. So more about Visa itself, this Visa app, users can actually share their emotions with this bot, such as the fears of losing their jobs, and receive suggestions from this penguin, how these emotions can be managed. And the bot can also direct them to relevant job support or skills training resources. So having a completely anonymous and confidential tool like mindline.sg or Visa is a very powerful way for people to dip their toe into the idea of getting help. This is when then they realize that mental health is actually a normal thing and it just has to be managed in the same way as a cold. In addition, Singapore also ran another campaign online using technology called Hi, Just Checking In, to encourage people to check in with their families and loved ones. As it may not be very obvious when someone we care for is going through a tough time, this online campaign actually encourages people to reach out and give other people support. And all it takes is to start the conversation with a hi. So here is just a short video of what this online campaign aims to do.
Oh, today was just a day, and you dealt with it okay. But tomorrow is a boy who needs to run. Oh, everything is about to change, but I say bring it closer to me.
Right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. And last but not least, I'd just like to share another app that has been developed in Singapore called Intellect, and it focuses on providing digital therapy without human intervention. Likewise, using technology to help with mental well-being. As I've mentioned earlier, in many parts of Asia, the biggest barriers to seeking psychological help include the high costs and the stigma of getting treatment. So this Intellect app actually helps to overcome these barriers by providing an easy access to mental health benefits. So people could actually speak with behavioral health coaches, work with licensed psychologists, entirely within an app. And this digital therapy app program will actually last for 4 to 6 weeks with different learning paths delivered in a series of sessions depending on what is your kind of help that you require. And this app is designed not just for people who are distressed, but also for other people who want to work on improving themselves. Thus, this app, this technology, by leveraging technology, it makes therapy actually more accessible, scalable, and affordable by leveraging technology itself. Finally, I'd just like to share that, this is just a short glimpse and a deep dive into how COVID-19 has affected my country, the mental health of the people in Singapore, and how we have strived to use technology to help people cope with these difficult times, whether is it an app or a campaign, online campaign, or a website. And I've come to the end of my sharing, but before I end, I'd just like to share that it's okay to seek help and know that you're not alone in this. So stay safe and take care. Thank you very much, and I look forward to Q&A later.
Thank you so much, Lim. It's so encouraging to see a government stepping into this field and reaching out to people at a moment like this, which is something you really don't see everywhere. So that was quite inspiring. Our next speaker is Petros Jakuros, who comes to us from Cyprus. He's the co-founder and curator of Beehive, an organization that provides free employability training, job fairs, and resources to international talent that wants to work or start a business in China. He's passionate about digital marketing, talent development, and connecting people to suitable personal and professional opportunities. As you can see from the slide, he's worked with organizations such as LinkedIn, Peking University, Beda, and the Confucius Institute at the University of Cyprus. And he's also worked with a range of companies, Volkswagen, Ventum Consulting, Pirelli, the UNFPA, and the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So he has a very broad client base he's worked with. He's originally from Cyprus. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Nottingham University, and he speaks fluent Mandarin Chinese. Take it away, Petros.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Robin. Let me just start sharing my screen. Amazing. A big shout out to all of the speakers, the previous speakers so far. So I'll be sharing from my own personal experience. As we've seen in Lim N's video, where we have seen people who use technology, apps and websites, the way Singapore is kind of helping its people to overcome depression. So we see that technology can help us to overcome depression and improve our mental health. But at the same time, as you've also heard from my own diverse background, it can be very challenging to focus when you have so many options, and it comes in the same way with applications. So in my daily life, and I guess same as you, who I know there are many entrepreneurs and many active people in the audience, we have a lot of different apps that we use for very different reasons. And for example, we use Slack, Airtable to collaborate with our teams and build different types of projects and databases. We use Notion, for example, or Evernote, or a lot of different types of apps to keep notes and keep our brain online. So kind of like it's a way to put your brain on your computer. And at the same time, I personally use brain training games every day because it's good for my mental health. At least it's fun and it's good. So it's a lot of different apps that I use. So we have a lot of different apps. We don't have enough focus. In the same way, we have a lot of different social media and messaging apps that we use for different reasons and different ways. For example, when I work, I use WeChat because that's the main communication tool in China. But when I communicate with family, I use Viber because that's the I guess one of the most popular messaging apps in Cyprus. When I talk with friends, I use WhatsApp again, and so we have a lot of all of these different apps that we have to use on a daily basis. And I am not ashamed to say that I am addicted to my phone. So even though technology has made me more productive, it helps me to connect with people all over the world. So just a quick like background story. I was in China for 5 years, but because of COVID, I've been back to Cyprus for the past 2 years. So I've been working remotely. I've been working online for the past 2 years. So this means that I rely a lot on my phone and on technology. So I use my phone a lot. And throughout the presentation, I'll kind of share my own way on how I try to overcome phone addiction. I wouldn't say that it's something that you overcome once. It's something that comes and goes, and it's something that you have to measure, just like your health. You know, it's like how many kilos are you, what's your fat percentage. It's the same with your phone usage, the same with your depression. It's something that comes and goes. So it's okay to say that you're addicted to your phone if you use it a lot. And I know from the audience that people here work a lot. As you've seen the background of our speakers, they're very active people. So we tend to rely on our phone to get things done. So phone addiction is not something, it's not a secret, it's everywhere. So we've seen a lot of different articles online on how we can break the smartphone addiction. Business leaders like Apple CEO tells you, don't let your children use social media. I don't know if Liman allows your kids to use social media, but it can be something very toxic and harmful if you don't control it. There are articles, again, by Harvard saying that phones are like donuts and drugs. So you have to be very disciplined on how you use it. And then we have more publications from Oxford that says, well, social media is not like drugs, but it depends. So it's kind of like the effects of social media depends on the people's personality, on how they use social media, and on their social surroundings. So in my case, I use social media a lot for work because we develop marketing campaigns. I do a lot of personal branding on LinkedIn, for example, and my social surroundings. So when you work from home, you kind of have no one, let's say, to communicate with in person. So you tend to rely on social media and technology to communicate. So sometimes this can be very toxic and impersonal. So just three quick ideas that I've seen that helped me to overcome phone addiction and to keep trying to overcome phone addiction and to make sure that I keep myself in check. So 3 ideas, it's 2 ideas. One idea is measuring how we use our phone and how often we use our phone. 2 is applying selective ignorance. And the first step of selective ignorance is to declutter our phone. So if it's one takeaway that I would like you to take from this quick sharing is for you to declutter your phone right now. And we're going to see how to do it very, very shortly. So the first step is to measure your usage. So you have to see, kind of understand and identify whether you have an issue or not. So it doesn't matter what the numbers look for you on your phone. I guess it's a good practice to try to reduce your phone usage, the number of notifications that you get on your phone, and the daily pickups. So these are 3 very easy metrics that you can find on your phone. This is from an iPhone, but you can also find it on Android. So you have to check how much screen time you have. So how much time you spend in front of your phone. That's 1. 2, check how many notifications you get. So the less, the better. And 3 is how many pickups you get. So let's say this is a pickup. I just pick up my phone, and then that's the less you have, the better. The second idea is applying selective ignorance. So selective ignorance or information diet It's all about letting go of distracting and unnecessary information. Say anything that is unnecessary, just let it go. So less information, fewer notifications, minimize the noise, and maximize the focus that you have. So especially right now, where we have a war happening in Ukraine, you should try to consume information that you need right now. Don't let the news absorb your focus. When you use email and social media, you can try and have specific times to check your social media and let people know about this. 3, turn off notifications and sounds, delete unnecessary apps. So I've uninstalled, for example, the LinkedIn app from my phone a couple of months ago. And I can say that that was a great thing because I was checking LinkedIn notifications for no reason. So I realized, okay, I'm addicted to the LinkedIn app. So now I use LinkedIn once or twice a day whenever I'm on my computer. So it's not something that I have to check. So that's something off my mind. So that's more focus, right? Smartwatch, I don't use a smartwatch, but if you do, turn off notifications. And again, this is an example of how you can set and let people know that, you know, I only check social media at 12, 4, and 7. So this is an example from my WeChat moments where I let people know, you know, I don't reply all the time. I am only online at 12, 4, and 7 p.m. So let people know that I'm not checking social media all the time. I'm not checking emails all the time. So they will be okay with you not responding on the spot. And then there you go. This is the biggest takeaway I hope that you have from me today, is for you to declutter your phone. So I would like you to be this guy. So you have one phone screen. There's nothing. There are no folders, no extra applications, and try to have no, zero notifications. Don't be this guy where you have a lot of different various notifications in a lot of different folders, right? So 3 key ideas to overcome your phone addiction: measure your usage, apply selective ignorance, and start by decluttering your phone. And this is a bonus. If you do journal and if you do reflect, try to do it on paper, not on your phone or computer. So I have the life planner that I use on a daily basis. So this is kind of like a journal that allows me to stay sane and more focused. So these are like my notes that I do in the morning and in the evening. So I highly encourage you to reflect and journal, not on a computer or your phone, but on a piece of paper that allows you to detach yourself from technology. So here's a book recommendation on how to apply selective ignorance in your life by Tim Ferriss. And here's 2 books recommendations by Johan Hari on how to find focus and understand depression. So I'll be sharing the presentation with the organizers, and I hope that you can find these books useful. Thank you for your focus. Again, thank you very much. Thank you, Robin.
Excellent. Thank you, Petros. I think you've got all of us thinking now, now am I addicted by those definitions? And I think everyone's come up with, I'm going to guess the same answer as me, which is, well, not there, but here. I'm fine on those things, but there's some other things I'd really better start working on. But that was terrific. Thank you so much. Our final presenter is Lawrence Yu. Lawrence is going to take a little more time because he's going to poll us and get us involved in thinking about happiness. Lawrence is a cross-cultural psychologist currently based in Beijing. As a researcher, he is an Oxford PhD in experimental psychology and a Schwarzman Scholar. Since 2016, his research contribution to mental health and intercultural exchange has earned him awards from the British Council, the Great Britain China Center, and Eurofin Scientific. As an entrepreneur, Lawrence co-founded Good City Foundation, which is a regional multilateral development organization to foster public-private partnerships in the emerging cities of Asia. The foundation is serving as an institutional partner of the G20 Global Smart Cities Alliance and in the private sector committee of the ASEAN Smart City Network. As a cross-cultural psychologist, Lawrence considers himself not only a researcher who studies people and culture, but also a people-centric, culturally sensitive entrepreneur. You're on, Lawrence.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes, you.
Awesome, thank you. So dear THINC fellows, I'm Lawrence Yu, so calling from Beijing, China. So I'm now I'm actually a psychologist, like specializing in culture and mental health. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. And so what I'm trying to do here is to do like a quick recap of what we discussed about like happiness, and also get you guys engaged in this discussion. So I believe like since COVID broke out, most of you may feel like more or less unhappy than before, right? During this time, we make friends without face-to-face interaction. We try to understand the world without traveling around. We are future leaders without much hope in recent years. So however, one thing we know for sure is there are certainly extraordinary times, and the need for happiness has never been more apparent. So the good news is happiness, just like COVID, can be contagious, so spreading from one person to another. So past research demonstrated that the happiness of one person does in fact have a strong effect on the other, feelings of happiness. But why can be? Is there any chance it can't be? Yes, if you don't take any action, for example, spread happiness. So it's powerful enough to spread through, people who don't even know each other. One psychology study shows that between two people who know each other, a happy person increases the other's happiness by 15%. A friend of friend will increase happiness by 10%. And a third degree connections can increase happiness by 6%. So mutual friends or friends that name each other as a close friends seems to have the greatest effect on each other's happiness. So some of you may argue, wow, Lauren, it's so hard to make friends now, right? So let alone to spread happiness. But one question here is, happiness can be contagious in real life, real life social connection. Does happiness spread the same way through online social networks? So in a separate but related study, the researchers observed around 1,700 Facebook profiles and finding that a person who posts pictures of him or herself like smiling on Facebook or other social media is more likely to have online friends who are also smiling in their profile pictures. So I will launch a polling question in a sec. So here is the question. Why does a Facebook user with a smile profile pictures tend to have more friends with a smile ones than others? So there are 4 answers. First, happy people share similar experience. Second, happy people are attracted to each other, just like a magnet. Third, happy people influence others to be happy. Last one, none of the above. So you will have around 1 minute to think carefully and do the polling. And I will call some of you to share your answers and also tell us why. So let me do the polling here. Okay, awesome. Oh. Yeah, please take your time. But at the same time, be fast.
The voting time is already over. It was only a few seconds.
Yeah, it got stopped somehow. If we could open it again.
We only see the results right now. Yeah, we can't vote. The results have shown a bit ago.
Okay, well, we launched the poll. Is it okay now?
It's not recording.
Yeah,
mine.
gotta leave it open.
Yeah, okay, awesome.
I can see it now, the question.
Okay.
But it's still not
for telling.
recording mine. So. There we go.
Okay, I will end the poll in 15 seconds. Okay, yeah, let me end the poll and share the results. Can you see that? Okay, awesome. So it seems like most of you like choose the second one. Okay, happy people are attracted to each other. So it seems it seems like opposite attracts doesn't like doesn't work here, right? So I just really curious, like who chose like none of the above. Could you share like your view? Anyone, could you just raise your hand if you choose the last one? Or you can unmute yourself if you wish, and then you can tell us your reasons. Okay. Yeah. One spoon.
Yeah. So I choose none of above because sometimes I get a feeling, maybe this a little bit cynical, but I feel like a lot of people like say post like really like it's almost like a mask of like they use like Photoshop the 美图秀秀, if you know what I mean, and makes those like life looks like a lot better than what actually is. So I'm not sure if the smile face is a good representation of like happy. So they just want other people look like they're happy, and so that's just
Okay, awesome. Interesting answer. Yeah. And okay, so what about the majority answers? So who choose the second one? Happy people are attracted to each other. Also, raise your hand and tell us why. Why do you think this one is correct? Anyone? Okay, if no, then I randomly draw some person then. What about Lynn? Which answer do you choose?
Right. I feel that happy people influence others to be happy. It's contagious.
Okay.
That's what you said.
Okay. Yeah. What about Petros? What do you think?
Maybe it's like all of the above. I was thinking that there should have been an all of the above option.
Okay. Yeah, think outside the box. Okay. So let's see what's the correct answer. Okay. So actually, I would say the answer is before I reveal the answer, anyone wanted to share your thoughts as well? No? Okay. So the answer is actually E, all of the above. Yeah, you can see I'm also like spreading my smiles, happiness here. So let me explain like the reasons why one by one. So the first one is confounding factors. So basically this is a term used to describe like what happens when a group of people who are connected share, similar life experience. Example of this could be like a group of people who works in the same office or live in the same neighborhood. So positive experiences can affect them individually and also, or as a whole. So this is one way people sharing like similar experience may experience the same cluster of happiness. The second one, homophily. So basically, this one is also the second reasons why there's more like profile pictures. Smiling profile pictures will also be their friends because happy people are always attracted to each other. So on a side note, similarity rather than opposites attract do receive research support. So basically, they will attract to each other like a magnet. Happy people find others that share, they're very similar to themselves and also become friends. Finally, induction. So induction is a term basically describing like a sensation of happiness in one person's leading to happiness in others. So full emotional contagions. So happiness is spread like through who we choose as a friend, shared life experience, and hanging out with people who are emotionally wired for happiness. So all this kind of theories, as well as also like the Photoshop's reasons, social is also like a really good reasons. So all of the reasons actually does not only happening like in real life like situation, but also in the online community. So in conclusion, so what should we do? After learning all this kind of like funny facts. So some people once said, before 2020, we avoid negative people. In 2020 and 2021, we avoid positive people. In 2022, we avoid people because we don't know if he or she is positive or negative. As a psychologist, as a THINC fellow, I venture to say that the world changes, and so do we. Today, let's make a change and spread happiness together. Thank you. And back to Ruben.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. That's great. Almost no one chose the first answer, and I would point out that, it's a complex quote, but those of you who know Tolstoy says that happy families are all alike, but unhappy families are unhappy in different ways. So we know what he would have answered to that question. Anyhow, now we have some time left for discussion. We've got about 10 minutes or maybe a little less. I think the best way to do this is simply through raising, rather than typing out questions, because I don't have any ones that have been saved up. Let's just use the hand raising function, and I'll ask Han to unmute the person when I call on them. So if you just want to raise your hand, please do so now. Okay, Maxton has raised his hand. Go ahead, Maxton.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question to Lim, reference the app that Singapore has introduced to tackle unhappiness or mental health challenges during COVID-19. How successful has this been since its implementation? From a cultural perspective, granted that in some cultures, especially yours and mine as well, Caribbean, we don't really talk about mental health, it's a bit taboo. So it's quite interesting to know what the feedback is like from that.
Right. Actually, it has been very positive thus far. I do not have the results in terms of the percentage, but for example, for the Hi Just Checking In campaign, what they found out was it actually increased 60% of the people who went to the website actually did do that to their friends and their loved ones. And this actually made them more conscious that they do, it's good to actively check in. So I think this website, like, for example, when I chanced upon this, I actually went to Visa and start chatting with the penguin. And I realized actually it's quite fun to you know, at like 2 a.m. and then you're just like thinking about things and you're on your bed and just have someone to chat with. And then this penguin actually checks back with you after, you know, the next day to see if it was useful. So it's like having someone anonymous to talk to without being judged. I think that was something that was really interesting and important. Yeah, so I think it's been quite successful thus far in Singapore, and then that's why they are expanding it. Thanks for your question.
I think it's really good what you said at the end there about talking to someone without feeling judged, because I think that's really critical. You know, being able to open up, especially to a complete stranger, and just be vulnerable with yourself, not thinking that this person is going to judge you because of how you feel or what you're going through, or even the things that you're talking about. But thanks.
Okay, we have a raised hand from Petros. Go ahead, Petros.
Thanks, Robin. This is a question for Professor Pang, in case he's still with us. I would like to see whether you have any other book recommendations, article recommendations that can help us understand the fundamentals of positive psychology, either from yourself or maybe people that you look up to or you collaborate with.
Or maybe type the question like in the chat box and ask him if he's not here at the moment.
Okay. It was a long shot, but thanks.
Yeah, he seems to be on still. Are you there, Professor Pang? Your camera and your microphone are off. Cloud is on. I think he's not there, Petros.
Yeah, no worries. I have a recommendation from Jonas Martin Seligman, who's also recommended. I guess I should check out the work by Martin. Thank you so much.
Very good. Any other? I'm looking for more raised hands, and I'm not sure I see one. Very good. Well, I think it's just almost 10:30. We're a minute or two away. Oh, Echo has that raised hand. Go ahead, Echo.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, I was just wondering. So I think it's really interesting to after today's session to see how AI could be a really sort of like a significant or increasingly significant contributor to, you know, like building or like meeting humans' emotional demands, especially in a time where we feel very powerless, we feel very disturbed. I was wondering if there are any more like resources or reports, papers I could look at to see if, you know, like what, if this sort of like emotional connection or emotional support by AI, by robots, how they could differentiate from, you know, our original emotional connection with people, because it feels like it's becoming like an increasingly integrated part of modern human beings. So I was wondering like how important that could be and how that could be, how different that could be. If like anyone know, you can type in the chat box and yeah.
Thank you, Echo.
I think Echo, like, you know, if you look at like effective computing journals, like there's quite a lot of like, you know, work academically happening. Also, like one of the other interesting things is like, you know, there's a company called WooBot who actually had the FDA approved for the chatbot that actually reduces the depression in 2 weeks. So one of the interesting work that they've been doing is to be able to like build the machine, like they help the machine to kind of understand that to engage the person in more conversation. So that way, like the robot's job is to actually, like the chatbot's job is to like understand the state of the mind of like, you know, the user, and then again, build more connection that you trust the chatbot better. So because when you actually like, you know, have automated calls or like, you know, these kind of robots, it's very difficult for a human to interact with it because you just don't trust the technology, right? So first you need to build trust between the technology. So that area of like, you know, designing effective machines is like a area of study called effective computing. So if you type on Google effective computing, you should be able to find enough resources in the space that how computer scientists and like, you know, psychologists together is designing like, you know, systems. Yeah.
Thank you, Biman. I think we're out of time, and I just wanted to end with a couple of comments. I wanted first to mention something that I noticed and leave you to think about this, because we've all been talking about people attracting, happy people attracting each other, community, coming together, being apart. Every single one of you in this group is from an island. Think about that. Biman, Sri Lanka. Maxton is in the British Isles now, but he's from St. Vincent in the Caribbean. Lim from Singapore. Lawrence from Hong Kong. Petros from Cyprus, and me. I'm from a small island off the coast of the US called Manhattan. So we're all islanders. And I wonder if that's what one of the things being in a space like that inspires some connections to other people and with happiness. Just a thought. Finally, I wanted to leave you with a definition of happiness. It's not original, but it's very striking. Professor Peng mentioned the biggest study on happiness that's ever been done, 200 million Chinese. But the longest one, the longest longitudinal study, which was done over 40 years by Harvard scientists about happiness, produced an incredible amount of information. It's a big, thick book. But this complex scientific study begins with a very short sentence, and that sentence is, happiness is love. So I leave you with that thought. And as I said, I give Harvard credit for it, don't give me credit. But thank you all for speaking, all our speakers, Professor Peng and the wonderful panel members. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and farewell, and be happy and be safe. Take care.
I think before we all leave, let's do a group photo.
Group photo?
That's something
Okay.
that's record our happiness at this moment, right? From around the world with everyone here, and then talking about happiness, right? And technology,
right.
maybe that's how technology adds our happiness as memory, right? For our later.
This time you really have to smile. Everybody has to smile. Meaning as if we're all
I just want to add one point, how language just, you know, transform the way we feel about our emotional state, right? I mean, like when Professor said, like Chinese, Spanish, I mean, even Italian, right? Like, you know, English, right? It's very interesting. So I guess we'll see, what, like a cheese, I guess, or what, English or some Chinese way to say the photo. Because in Chinese, it's like 茄子. It's something similar to cheese, but like it's an
But it means
eggplant.
eggplant.
Okay. Correct. So, but anyways, we'll just do whatever you prefer, cheese or cheese, okay? And 1, 2, 3, let's say cheese. And then 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay.
Cheese.
Cool. Yeah. I hope you're also taking some screenshots. And yeah, really thank you everyone. A very enlightful session. And yeah, we'll follow our Instagram, our Facebook and LinkedIn for the photos. I'll also like, you know, we'll share them later. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's really lovely. So, but is there anyone want to share some last minute you know, words or your thoughts? Otherwise, I guess we'll say goodbye.
Thank you, everyone, for
happy birthday, February babies.
Happy birthday, Xiaoning.
Xiaoning. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Be happy.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.